And it frees one from all sinful reactions. You're more peaceful. Those situated in that mode become conditioned. Here's the catch. Here's the downside of it. Become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with being happy and what's wrong with knowing things? Nothing. That's good. But unless you're connected to Krishna, you just become bound by it. Prabhupada writes in the purport, if you're in the mode of goodness, maybe you're born as a poet or a scientist or a philosopher, and you're better off than most people in the world. So you become proud of that, and you think, oh, this is a very nice life. I'm better off than so many people. But then you still die. I once read a book called How to Read a Book, because I was going to edit a book, and I had never edited a book before. So this book was all about how to read a book. So this guy who wrote the book, he was a philosopher named Mortimer Adler, and he said, and you should just absorb your mind in this life in all the classics, and they will take you higher and higher and higher until one day you die. And I thought, wait a minute. What good is that? I still die like the dog in the street. And then he just went on. He didn't even address that. He just thought, okay, you die. And I thought, what about that? What about death? What book is going to help me out of that? So he didn't talk about, anything transcendental. So he was kind of absorbed in the goodness of reading books and, knowing more things than other people. Okay, so sometimes the mode of goodness is compared to the airport, because if I want to go back to New Orleans on, when is it I'm leaving? Tuesday, February 5th. Right. And it's really good if I go to the airport. That's the best place to catch the plane, right? But if I don't get on the plane, it's all useless. So it's great to rise up to goodness, but then if I don't transcend from goodness, if I don't use it as a springboard to transcendence, then what's the use? Okay. All right. Concluding quotes. More?
When one is fully practiced in the methods of Krishna conscious control, he can become qualified to be a bona fide spiritual master.
Right, so this is the secret. It's Krishna. You see the phrase Krishna conscious control? Because everybody in the world, we're all, if we're not God conscious, we're all being tortured by choices. Should I do this or that? Now, if I do this, we make a list, right? Now the upside of doing this is that, and the downside is doing that. So everything's full of duality. Whatever you do, there's an upside and a downside. But in Krishna consciousness, there's none of that duality, because you just do what Krishna wants you to do under the guidance of the spiritual master. So we know, for example, by practice, what's good for us, what's good for our Krishna consciousness, what's good for our service. So we're not tortured by the duality of choices, but we are practiced to choosing only what's favorable for a devotional service. Just like Krishna said, or Arjuna said, in the second chapter, which is the whole book in the summary. He said, how does that start? 254. Arjuna Uvacha. Stitipragyas. How does that? Stitipragyas. It's 254. Stitipragyasya kabhasha samadhistasya keshava sitadiking prabhasheta kimasita brajeta kim. So this is interesting, because Arjuna asked a very kind of external symptom question, and Krishna gave him a very internal answer. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What does he sound like, a transcendentalist? What is his language? How does he talk? How does he sit? How does he walk?" Yeah. So, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Prajahati yada kaman sarvam partamanogata atmanyivatmana tushta sitapragyasta doshate. This is a very internal response to a very apparently external question. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction. We just imagine we're going to enjoy. And even if there's some fleeting pleasure, it just evaporates. Which arise from mental concoction. And when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, that means serving Krishna, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Yeah, most of the pleasure, as advertisers know, is in the anticipation of how happy you're going to be when you get the object, whatever it is, the whiskey, the mate, the money, the car, and then you get in it. You know, it's like when you go through the checkout line at the supermarket, they always have these tabloids, you know, the movie stars, what they're up to, right? And they look like the most driven, the most possessed people, because they're the people everybody's worshiping, and they're not happy. Oh my God, everybody's idolizing me, but this is not making me happy. Therefore, so many drugs, so many suicides, so many, yeah. Yes.
But Prabhu, like why we are saying like they are doing suicide, the film star or TV star, other people also do suicide through all these things.
Yeah. In other words, why seeing that they're not happy, why are we chasing them? Is that what you're saying? And doing the same thing they're doing.
Yeah, even the others also not happy.
Why? We just studied about it. We don't have a higher taste. Even if you see that this isn't making people happy. Like here's one of the funniest people ever, Robin Williams, the comedian, and he killed himself. You know, this guy, he could make any voice, do any character. He was like a wizard. You know, and so many funny movies, and he blew his brains out because he didn't even know what was going on, but he started to lose his mind.
Yeah, it was deep depression.
Yes, he was getting depressed. Why? Because he was losing his powers, his siddhis that enabled him to make any voice and any gesture and any, you know, he could be anybody. And then he was losing that, so he was getting depressed. So.
In India also, like Prabhu, this very senior so-called spiritual guru, Prabhu, he committed suicide actually, Prabhu.
A guru?
Like he was following some kind of system, and a lot of politicians were like taking his advice and
In
India?
In India? Yeah.
In India, Maharashtra actually. Very, very MP, Madhya Pradesh. So very popular actually. A lot of politicians were his, Raju Bhaiya or something. So and he committed suicide. So
because he was some kind of pretender there, right? He wasn't really getting the higher tastes. He was somehow controlling them, and
there were a lot of them like that.
Wasn't the real deal.
No, but when under pressure, some people fall. That's what happens.
Yeah.
they didn't get the high taste, that means.
That's what I'm saying. And then pressured by the politicians, like you said, that just pushes them down.
Yeah. There was once a conference of Indologists in 1979. Just after, a couple of years after Prabhupada left in 77. And it was right in Los Angeles. And it was all the leading, Indologist means people who study Indian culture and philosophy and like that. So the leading Indologist of the day was there too. The senior, his name was A.L. Basham. And so the theme of the conference was all the gurus, swamis, and yogis who had been coming to the West, especially America, since the 1890s, beginning with Vivekananda. And what it turned into, because the scholars knew, at least theoretically, Vedic knowledge, but they knew these people were just coming to the West and making a business of Vedic knowledge and getting followers and a little fame and fortune, and then going back to India, like that. So after bashing all the yogis for the whole conference, several days. Oh, and some devotees from the LA temple, they snuck in disguise, because they weren't invited, but somehow they got in. Maybe they pretended they were professors or something, I don't know. So they were hearing these scholars bash all these yogis, swamis, and gurus. But then at the last day, at the end of the conference, A.L. Basham, who was their senior, who was the dean of all these guys, he stood up and he said, "But there was one Swami who was not a streamlined Swami, who didn't streamline the message to pander to the taste of Westerners was Bhaktivedanta Swami. And they had to accept it, he was saying, because he was the senior. And the devotees were in ecstasy. Of all the gurus, swamis, and yogis who were being bashed, there Prabhupada's emerging as it is, the real deal. And Prabhupada proved it by living it. And the devotees who live with Prabhupada, so like I once asked the Swami, what's it like to live with Srila Prabhupada? Jagat Guru, expanding a movement all over the world, translating dozens of books. He's like, it's a Hare Krishna explosion. What's it like to live inside the explosion? And then the Swami said, you won't believe this, but amidst the Hare Krishna explosion, Prabhupada was the calm inside the storm. He was very regulated. He did the same thing at the same time every day, even though he was always traveling. If he landed somewhere and it was midnight, oh, okay, it's time to translate. If it was 6 a.m., oh, it's time for the morning walk. If it was noon, oh, it's time for the midday massage. And dictating letters and taking a bath and taking prasad. You know, he was always doing the same time wherever he happened to be. That was the miracle. So there was no difference between his private life and he was the same. He was always just Prabhupada, Krishna conscious. It wasn't that he was, having some double life or something. So that's the higher taste. Yeah. And then that's a spiritual master. Completely transparent to Krishna. And then finally, yes. Now, I'm happy to report, what is that, by the way?
Rupa Goswami
Rupa Goswami Samadhi.
Outside of Radha.
Yeah, Radha Damodar Temple. Now, for some reason, some years ago, some people, I guess they must have been in charge of the temple, they decided that, what was the reason? Actually, I did hear the reason. I forget. Anyway, they decided to cover that Samadhi with a big structure. But now they've uncovered it again,
Yes,
right?
it's all covered now.
It's still covered.
Yes.
Well, I heard that they're going to remove that, and
There is some construction also.
yeah, they're doing something to one, because Prabhupada, when he would look out his rooms, he was able to see Rupa Goswami Samadhi.
It's not visible now.
And it's not visible now, but they're going to uncover it again, which I was very happy to hear. So, anyway, yeah, very nice. Let's see. I think that's it. Okay. Somehow is there any questions? Yes, Prabhu.
So like in this verse actually it talks about like making disciples. What does that mean actually, bro? Like Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, like, and what's the need for that?
What's the need?
Yes, means why should one take this kind of responsibility?
Yes, because if you actually become sense-controlled and Krishna conscious and an example for others to follow, you need, what do they say in French? Noblesse oblige. It means to whom much is given, much is expected. We're taking all this mercy from Prabhupada, right? The teachings and the life, the puja and the sangha and the prasad. So we're expected to not just keep it, we're expected to share it with others. Yeah, so that's nice. Now today, like Prabhupada would say, today's student or today's teacher, today's student is tomorrow's teacher. Today's disciple is tomorrow's master. So according to our capacity. At least we have to, Prabhupada would say, the highest principle is to save yourself. Because if I'm not, if I'm bewildered or if I'm drowning in the ocean of ignorance, then how can I help others? So if we avail ourselves of Prabhupada's teachings and then we share it with others. It's because the world, especially in Kali Yuga, boy, the suffering is intense. Right? Individually, socially, collectively, on the world stage. Look at today, it's crazier than ever. So, Prabhupada did want us to, Shiksha Diksha, they're both equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, whether instructing Guru or initiating Guru. It's really all about instructing, no matter what the Guru is doing. Even if the Guru doesn't open his or her mouth, The Guru is always instructing by personal example,
Mm.
which is actually the most powerful instruction anyway, how we live. So, yeah, we need to help people. And this is where, first we in-reach, this is the in-reach, where we're having our own Sangha, and then we outreach. Like whether you're in school or you're at work, we can share Krishna with others in some little way. You know, even if it usually starts with food. People see that we're eating differently. Hey, what are you eating? What is that? Oh, this is dokla. Dokla, what's that? Not pizza, is it? No, dokla. It goes well with coconut chutney. Coconut chutney, what's that? Krishna, what he likes to eat is a higher taste. He eats the best. And what makes him hungry for the food we offer is the love and devotion. Otherwise, as Prabhupada would say, he has no need for our puris and halwa, but he likes the love we offer it with. So, is that right? Yeah, like you're doing. You're opening up your house. Yeah, otherwise I'd be freezing out there. And next time, we'll go, see, this is lesson 1, it was the preface, and lesson 1, and the next time we'll do texts 2 and 3.